What's up, everybody? Josh and Joe here from RamRods Archery. You are watching Follow Through. We are here with special guest Kevin Mather, the Rooster, the reigning Olympic champion and world champion in 2023. Kevin, tell us a little bit about how things went leading up to this competition. Kind of what were you working on, what was on your mind, and what was your strategy going into this event?
I was, training a good amount. Probably not the heaviest training load I've shot going into a major competition. The year before an Olympic and Paralympic Games, there's quota slots that a country must earn in order to have athletes go to those games. So that was the biggest hurdle or biggest goal going into these World Championships was I wanted a quota slot. That was kind of like the main focus. And my training style is a little, from what I hear different people doing, like it's not normal. I think volume is like paramount to shooting archery well. And it's not like I just go and blast a ton of arrows and don't care about my form. Like I think you need to give good intention to that volume as well. And that's like the hard part is to maintain that mental drive to like care about every arrow you're shooting, that where the score really doesn't matter at all. So one of the biggest ways I train for shooting archery is at home. I can shoot like 45 meters. So I will shoot 30 meters on an 80 centimeter face and just work on cleaning that round. Right? Like shooting a 10 at 30 meters on an 80 centimeter face is really not that hard to do. But it's really hard to do that 36 times in a row. So, once my bows, I go through a tuning process, I get it shooting, adequately where I like it. Of course, I will shoot at 70 meters at times and make sure my groups are acceptable at 70 meters. But once I have faith in my equipment, my setup, and I know my shots hit, at distance, then to ramp the volume, like I will shoot at 30 meters just because just cutting that distance in half that I'm rolling to the target, pulling arrows and coming back, like just that alone can boost my volume than shooting at 70 meters. And like 70 meter ranges are a little, it's at least like a half hour drive for me at home to get to a spot where I can shoot 70 meters. So I'm like, okay, I'm cutting down an hour of drive time and setup time. Like I can just wheel out of my house, start shooting arrows. So that's mainly how I prepared for this tournament. And that was my mindset, is just be confident in my shot, and building that volume is crucial to me as an athlete. Some people can do it with a lot less, but I need that arrow count.
So I think that's a cool, tidbit of information for people, because I feel like in my own shooting, I was always a little bit paranoid about like how I'm splitting my training up into like blank bale versus all of the other different distances back when we used to shoot a FIDA. And I always like wonder in the back of my head, if I'm not shooting enough 90, is that going to hold me back? Or if I'm shooting all at 70, is that good or bad? Or if I have to only shoot 10 or 20 meters because that's what I can get at home, but I could shoot more total arrows if I just did that, is that better? So, I mean, obviously you're shooting mostly at 30 meters and then go and crush it at 70. So that's not holding you back in any way. And you're at the top of your game with that strategy. So I think that should be encouraging for anyone else who maybe can't get to 70 meters all the time to know, you can shoot awesome scores just doing good volume and making a training structure that works with your location and available shooting ranges and still reach your potential.
Yeah, it's a big, even back in 2018, when I broke all the FIDA world records, I did most of my training at 30 meters for that as well. Going into that, I had probably shot less than 1,000 arrows at 90 meters and had not shot 90 meters within a couple weeks of going into that tournament where I was shooting that FIDA round. Honestly, I was shocked when I shot that day because it was like it wasn't howling windy or anything, but it was like drizzling rain all day and kind of just cold, miserable conditions. And, like I was shooting in like a vest and like had hand warmers. So like I'd get done shooting and like stuff my hands in the hand warmers because I was like, my hands were hurting. And I was so shocked. I was just sitting there shooting at 90 and I'd like look at my scope. I'm like, that's definitely in the yellow. Like, I don't know how I'm doing this, but I'm just doing it. So yeah, like I think a lot of people get in their own head about, if somebody thinks like, oh, I have to train at 70 meters, like to be successful, like once you put that roadblock in your way mentally, like that's going to be how training is for you. Like if you decide that that's what you need to do, like that's going to be what you need to do, because you're not going to trust yourself, right? If you shoot at other distances. But, if you hold yourself to a really high standard at the different distances, I find if I shoot on a 60 centimeter target around that, 36, 37 meters, in calmish conditions, I shoot the same scores, oftentimes, I have an indoor range near my house that I can shoot 40 yards at. So one of my, I live in Denver, Colorado. It's cold in the winter. So that sort of bump of going from indoors to outdoors, like I'll shoot 35 or 40, 35 meters or, 40 yards on a 60 centimeter target, all bare shafts, and just score that. And, like those scores tend to be lower than my actual 70 meter scores, with fletched arrows. So, you can always find a way to make your training harder so that when you go outside, it's like, oh, this is easy. So, always, get creative, I'm pushing around a wheelchair. So like if I don't have somebody pulling arrows for me, like me shooting, 70 meters on some of the ranges near me are kind of like gravelly or sandy, and, I could do it, but pushing myself through that is going to, physically exhaust me a lot sooner than if I'm just, shooting at, 40 meters at my house.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too, because maybe Josh and I get this in our heads a little bit as far as like trying to have everything lined up perfectly and then trying to add the volume on top of that. I think sometimes we get hooked into this idea of maybe coaches who are at ranges that are 70 meters say like, this is where you need to train, this is what we have access to, but the average archer doesn't have access to that all the time, or very rarely sometimes. So the main hurdle to be overcome is not drive more, spend more time in traffic, and do this only once a week. It's check your grouping, your sight alignment, or your sight marks at a longer distance every so often, and maybe do a little bit of prep for a tournament. But otherwise, making the practice easy and repeatable and, more days a week is the most critical part. Just acknowledge that, yeah, like this is not ideal conditions. We're not at a perfect training center where every day we get up and can shoot 400 arrows at a 70 meter pristine target in no wind. Like that's what 0.1% of archers have. Most of them have to take a different mix of ingredients in their life or location and put something together that is going to be much more advantageous for them, but not look like the ideal training scenario under what most people might preach.
Yeah, it's been shown that if you're not going to train 4 days a week, like, right, if you're going to shoot 3 days a week, like, you're probably not going to improve in your shooting. Like, right? So if you can be more consistent every day, or as many days as you can get to the range or get to wherever you're training, it's going to show better improvements, right? You're going to be better off if you can shoot 100 arrows a day, 6 days a week. It's going to be better than shooting like 300 arrows a day twice a week. The way you build the myelin on, right, your nerves, and the way your body responds to things, and the way you develop that, you develop the shot process, you develop, the mental ability to execute well-executed shots. It's far and away better to shoot more consistently throughout the week than it is to get to 70 meters. So in my mindset, archery is a process-based sport, and the better I run my process to be more consistent, the better my arrows are downrange. Now, obviously, it's also a result sport because whoever hits the center of the target more often is going to win. So if I can shoot at, whatever distance is most available to me, for me, that's up to 40 meters at my house, like, if I make a bad shot at 40 meters, it does not hit the middle. Like, it's still giving me the same feedback as at 70 meters. Like, at 70 meters, sure, if there's like a 15-mile-an-hour crosswind, a bad shot's going to really not hit the middle. To where at 40 meters, it's like, yeah, it's kind of out. So you just need to hold your level of what is acceptable tighter when you're at those shorter distances. Like, when I'm shooting 30 meters on a 80-centimeter face, like, that looks humongous. So it really makes me pick, like, okay, what part of the center of the target am I staring at, right? And then if I shoot like a 9-10 liner as my first arrow, like, making myself pick the middle of the X-ring as my aim point is very difficult because there's that arrow sitting there on the 9-10 line that your eyes really want to just stare at that knock, right? You're like, oh, look at that knock. It's really easy to look at that. Like, it's real hard to look at this blank spot in the middle of the yellow. But mentally making yourself do those things becomes very challenging. And it's like, yeah, if your first arrow of an end is out there on that line and you let yourself get sucked in there, like, boom, it could be a right 9, no problem, And then you're like, okay, like, now I got 2 arrows over there. Now I really need to focus, So, yeah, I highly encourage people, it's your volume is critical, like, right? And so if you're a newer archer, doesn't matter, old, young, whatever, if you're a newer archer, like, one, don't ramp your bow weight in a way that is going to injure you. Because if you get injured, all of a sudden, boom, your training has to drop off to recover from that injury. Well, now your volume just went out the window. And so now you're not getting any reps in. It's like, what can you do? If I were to look at a chunk, like a month or 3 months of time, be like, how can I shoot the most volume in this chunk of time? If you're like, oh yeah, like 4 weeks into this 3-month period, I get injured, and now for like 2 weeks I have to drop off. Well, that's 2 weeks of time you just gave away. So, like, always be looking at how can I maximize volume, it doesn't got to be crazy. It's not like you got to be like 3,000 arrows a week or something like that. For most people shooting this sport, that's not realistic, but you still need to look at, like, how can I maximize this? It's like, okay, like, I turn my phone off. I don't look at my apps. I do that, like, I will sit at blank bale and I will shoot, I will do, good old 4-minute drill, but my blank bale arrows, I've got 17 of them, so I do 4-minute drill for 17 arrows, and like, that's how I do, building endurance, all that stuff, like, still with a focus on, I put little, like the sewing push pins, I stick those into my blank bale, and I only use the gold ones, so I'm still staring at gold, like little baby gold thing. And that's how I blank bale, right? And that's how I make sure I don't blast my own arrows, and that way I've got something to aim at where the process matters. And so yeah, I'm a big proponent of volume with focus. Like, you can't just like, oh, whatever, blank bale, just throwing arrows into a target. Like, you've got to respect the process and build the process. Whatever your mental game is, every arrow, like, build that at blank bale. Like, right, if you can't run your mental process perfectly shooting blank bale, like, you're not, it's not going to kick in naturally when you're on that stage and you got to make a big shot.
Yes. So yeah, one other question too. So you kind of described, and I thought it was really, really valuable for most people to say, hey, your conditions don't have to be perfect as far as the exact same 70 meters that you will be competing at. So you can shorten this up, and in your case, 30 meters seems to be a really good balance point of getting a lot of that, 95%, 98% of the same feeling and training and strength training. But likewise, I guess I'm curious why you don't do as much 18 meters or why, or how much blank bail you mix in there, or why not go shorter? Like what's the trade-offs for you of like, you need a certain amount of aiming at a target or aiming at the gold or feeling the shot actually travel down there rather than having, your maybe higher quality distance arrows versus blank bail arrows, etc.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for me, like 18 meters, and I bet this is even more so for standing athletes, right? So I shoot from a wheelchair. So 18 meters, I feel my sight is so high that it is a bit different feeling. And the other thing is at 18 meters, I can't shoot 6 arrow ends without at a single spot without blowing up arrows. So, at 30 meters outdoors, I get, I can shoot 9 arrow ends and generally not blow up arrows. I'll blow up some nocks for sure, but it's a good balance for me to get that volume. I still want to be aiming at a single spot because that I think is, if you can do it on 3 spot, that's great. Like if you can bring that focus, shooting at a 3 spot it requires more mental energy. It just does. So if you're able to do that, that's amazing. Just do that. They make 60 centimeter 3 spots for the 25 meter round. So if you want to shoot at that at whatever distance at 25 meters, like that's great. It's a round that I can compare to. So right, if you can shoot 50 meters, shoot 50 meters. Like you can go look up the world records for your discipline and for your division, and right, like if you look at the 50 meter, either the able-bodied or the para records, like the 50 meter record. So 50 meters is shot on an 80 centimeter target, right, for the feet around, and it's the world record between 50 and 70 meters. It's within like 2 points. Like it's very similar. Like right, people don't. The target aspect ratio is like within like 1 or 2% of 70 meters on 122 versus 50 meters on an 80 centimeter target. So there's coaches I've worked with and I shoot their backyards. You can shoot 50 meters, so we shoot 50 meters there, and it's all about managing your expectations of like what a good shot is for you, like a well executed shot, and then what a well executed shot's outcome is for you. And right, so if you could do that, so before I shot that feed around, it was dumping rain the day before, and I wanted to get some arrows in. It was up in Washington, and there was a local shop that had, and it was an 18 meter range. So I was shooting there the day before I shot those rounds. Like, so I, and I was shooting really well. It was an outdoor bow, shooting X10s. And I was able to, I was shooting consistently above like 296s indoors there. And so, for me, that's really good indoor rounds. So it's always like setting your expectations for like what's a well executed, shot, which leads to a well executed round, and boosting your volume within that. So it's going to be different for anybody going through this process. It's going to be like, okay, what do you have available to you? Like, well, I live in an apartment. There's not anywhere I can shoot in a legal manner within 30 minutes from my house. Well, are you going to annoy your neighbors if you blank bail in your apartment? Like, some people's bows are really loud. Like, I don't know. Like, do you have a garage you can get into? Do you have somebody else's garage? Like, it's like, okay, if you can get, if your volume is, blank bail, and you can get to a range, twice a week, well then blank bail. Like, don't just throw it away. Don't be like, oh, well, blank bail's stupid, so I'm not going to do anything. If you can build the feeling of what a well-executed shot is, right? Oh, is my anchor perfect? Like, am I expanding controlled in a manner that I'm controlling and expanding? Like, can I make this happen? Like, right? Like, if blank bail's all you got, make your blank bail extremely hard. Like, right? Like draw back, like get anchored, hold that thing there for like 30 seconds and then try to execute a shot. Like, right? Make your life as hard as you possibly can. So that way, when you're shooting on the line, it's easy. Humans are designed, right? Designed or evolved to we're like water, right? The easiest path, the path of least resistance. Like if it's easy, we're going to do the easy way. But if you can go out of your way and make your life harder while you're training, the competition's going to be easy. So I highly recommend making your life harder. Like, right, shooting 35 meters, all bare shafts, and like caring about my score, like that's not easy. And when you wing one, it's way out there. So you got to develop a process where that won't happen.
Yeah, I like the mindset of making sure you're not giving yourself things too easy or giving yourself like an advantage in training. You want to kind of push yourself to make sure things are challenging, because when you go compete, no one's going to be giving you the benefit of the doubt or letting you do the easy version of something. You got to do it one certain way. On the topic of kind of like mindset and how you approach things, I remember earlier you said that you went into the World Championships with the primary goal of trying to earn some spots. Was that right?
That's correct.
Earn those quota spots. So is there a difference for you in how you approach things mentally when you're going in to a tournament mainly focused on like, I just want to win this tournament for me, or I'm just looking for this performance for myself, versus this one's a little bit different. I need to earn some quota spots here, and this has like longer reaching implications than just this event.
At the end of the day, I really try to not focus on that as I'm shooting, but it's what drives the level of preparation for me, right? If there's goals that are less important to me, my training will reflect that. My training reflected that going into World Champs. Our World Champs got bumped a year because of COVID and because the Paralympics got bumped back a year. So we actually had World Champs back to back. So we shot World Champs in 2022. And I had just won Tokyo, and I kind of went vacation mode in archery land because I'm like, I had given so much of my time and commitment in life to archery going into Tokyo. And then I won the thing, and I was like, I need a vacation from archery. And not that I hated art. I was still shooting a compound. I was still messing around, well engaged with the archery community, shooting a lot of 3D and stuff with some of my buddies. But as far as shooting, Olympic recurve, I didn't have a big desire to get those high volume days in. So, and my performance reflected that at that World Championships. So this being like, okay, this is the bigger year, quota slots are on the line. So my training reflected that of, there's pressure for myself. Like, right, if our country doesn't maximize our quota slots, like there's going to be less athletes from the US that can go to Paris. So, and if there's less athletes going to Paris, that means my chances of earning one of those slots is now reduced, of becoming one of the athletes going to Paris. So, there was high stress and implications on the line. So my training reflected that, I was more serious, higher volumes, more mental training. It was on my mind a lot more throughout, day and night. I'm kind of an obsessive person. So like, even when I'm not shooting archery, I'm thinking about shooting archery and like, okay, like I'll have thoughts in the middle of the night, like maybe I should move my ankle, it's like just weird stuff that I'm sure most of it doesn't matter. It always cracks me up. Like I hear other archers talking about, I totally reworked my whole form and all this stuff. And then I see a video I'm shooting, I'm like, you look pretty much the same as I saw you 2 months ago. Okay. But yeah, it's more of a mindset of, okay, this matters. And my training needs to reflect that, right? Like I was doing, SBTs, 8:00 at night in my guest room, not every day of the week or anything like that, but I hate doing SBTs, and I was doing SBTs. So that's how much I care about, doing this.
So question two, because you at the World Championships are looking to secure quota spots for next year. A lot of other countries are too. And now we're getting into Berlin as well for the able-bodied world championships coming up this week. And tons more athletes are trying to secure spots for the Olympics. I'm sure as a veteran, maybe there's you've settled a little bit into a way that you think about these implications, or the idea that there's more people, like Josh was saying, than just you kind of wanting a bigger, improved, high-quality performance for your own goals. What advice would you give to people who are maybe new to this situation, and younger archers who have a little bit of pressure, feeling that everybody's talking about, well, are you going to not only do well as an individual, but are you going to be able to make sure that you can handle the pressure of having your country now looking to you to help secure spots that they can even attend the Olympics?
I would encourage people to only accept the pressure that they're willing to deal with, because, right, like for our recurve teams over there right now, like in Berlin, for those 3 people on that team, that's an insane amount of pressure, because not only, like, you as an individual, right, can earn a slot for the country, but really the team is the only way we can get maximum quota slots for a country. Right, you have to be top there, so you have to hit the podium at World Champs to earn a team slot for your country, and that's asking a lot. So that's a huge amount of pressure, and everybody wants to be the best archer in the world. You know, the people in competitive archery who you know, right, there's people out shooting in their backyard and they could care less about competitive archery, and that's great too. Like, but right, if you're going down that competitive road, and if you have coaches putting pressure on you that you're unwilling to accept, like if you have parents, like that's a little rougher. You can't just tell your parents whatever, but like you need to understand the level of pressure that's being put on you, and you need to be able to manage that, right? And for younger athletes out there, like that can be, you might not know what is being asked of you, or you know, or what is happening. So, you know, I've seen athletes struggle, like crying on the line and just like imploding because all this pressure is on them, and they think they need to be the best archer in the world right now. And I'm like, guys, it's just archery. Like, it's not like, you know, if you don't shoot a 10 right now, it's not like that was the cure to cancer, now we'll never have it. Like, it's really not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of life, at least in my perspective. So I understand, like, if this is your career and this is how you feed your family and things, like there's more pressure there, but there's like a good amount of easier ways to to make a living than archery, at least like recurve archery on the world stage, to you know, earn a living. So the only reason there's pressure on me is because I've allowed that pressure to be there. And, you know, so there's getting yourself in that situation. And then there's dealing it once you're in that situation. So, right, like, so once I'm like, okay, I'm Kevin Mather, I'm on the U.S. World Championship team, and I'm going to Pilsen to represent my country and try to earn quota slots. Okay, well, how do I deal with this pressure? Well, for me, like, what's my best way to shoot as best as I possibly can? It's like, okay, to like one, be prepared, right? So train in a manner that I think meets that level of standard, right? If I got in that situation and I hadn't put my bow together and I just showed up, you know, and hadn't shot in a month and just showed up, like, I'd be really stressed, because I'd be like, I don't know what's going to happen when I draw this bow back. Crazy. Like, I would implode under that pressure. But so train to a level that you believe is going to lead to success for the situation you're in, right? And so for me, that means like working with coaches that I believe can help me lead to success. That means like putting in the time and effort that I believe will lead to a successful outcome, and like being as well prepared. And like being well prepared is like training physically, mentally, and having my equipment dialed in. So now I'm ready. I put myself in a position where I believe I will have success. Right. And then day of, like, and we'll get into this during the match, like, what do you think about? Well, like, it's the mantra throughout all of archery, is one arrow at a time, but how much can you break down and actually do that? And it's really difficult to do because a lot of external factors really want to suck your attention elsewhere. And, you know, at the end of the day, I can only control me. Like, I can't control that other person, you know, in the other lane shooting against me. Like, if somebody just drops 30 after 30 on me, like, I can't shoot 31s, you know? So, like, in the wind we were shooting in out there, like, if I shot a 27, I was stoked. So, like, you know, like, it's, you can't control the other side. So you can only work on your side, be as best prepared as you can possibly be, and then go from there. So that was a long circular argument for just worry about you and be as best.
No worries. I think it's really important to talk about, though, because I do think that people have a lot of different kind of, let's say, internalized definitions of pressure or internalized assumptions about where they fit within this, you know, grand scheme of their career and archery and their skill level and what they can achieve or what is much more of a reach. And I think it's important to be able to even vocalize that, because if you can't, then you're kind of just stuck with whatever you already got going on, and you can't change it or improve it or adjust it if you're not happy with it. So I know that for myself, one of the things that I kind of reframed or adjusted for issues of these quota spots or pressure like that was this idea that kind of reframing it in the sense that I have the most to gain or lose by this. I'm not doing this necessarily for anybody else. Like, there's obviously fringe benefits of doing well and making people proud and being able to secure a spot or bring home a medal or whatever. But I'm the one who has more invested than any other particular person in my performance and my training and my outcome. So it's a choice that I'm making. And if I'm okay with taking that risk or taking that leap or putting my performance on the line, then I don't really owe an explanation to anybody else. And that you could say, okay, in general, the general public or people who might chime in with stuff, it's like, that's maybe easier to try to kind of ignore and justify. But when it comes to parents and coaches and especially teammates, it's a lot harder, I think, to distance yourself from the idea of disappointing a teammate who's now on the line with you and giving just as much as you are, presumably in training and of themselves and their time and energy. And that's something I think that maybe through different sports when I was younger, you have to deal with this idea of not just my own performance and expectations, but do I help or let down my teammates? And that's something that I think that, again, even in these situations, I tried to say, you know what, I'm as prepared as I think is appropriate, and I trust in that training, and I trust in my mental preparation and my processes that I deserve to be here. I mean, I made the team, but a lot of people might still think that even after making the team and becoming in this position, maybe I don't 100% deserve to be here and represent my country as the top 1 or 3 people in the country. So I felt like that was something I was able to internalize really well for archery that I wasn't able to do earlier in my life with other sports, but I got better at it with archery and was able to say, I want myself and my teammates to be focused in a healthy way on having fun and kicking ass in competition, not on, am I going to disappoint somebody? Like, let's go out there and do our best and let it rip. And, you know, sometimes shit happens and you don't get what you want, and you don't owe anybody an explanation if you feel like going into it, you've done what you need to do. So I think that was just a way that I kind of reframed it too. But I definitely see a lot of people still dealing, and my own self too. Not that I'm cured of any or by any means, but it's just you got to be able to, I think, vocalize these things and discuss them so that going into a competition you feel kind of clear-headed about how you see yourself in this situation.
Yeah, and like another thing that came up right when I was out there with the team, and so after I had won, like I was hanging out in the hotel. You know, I brought my bow and everything back to the hotel, and there was kind of, you know, not the entire team, but a good handful of the team. And, you know, everybody's like, "Oh, aren't you crazy pumped?" Yada yada. And I'm like, "Yeah, that was fun." Like, and they're like, "Why aren't you like amped or whatever?" And I'm like, to me, shooting archery is the reward. So like anything else that I win or you know, have good success at, it's kind of like a bonus sort of thing. So I really like shooting archery. Like if I'm not shooting my Olympic recurve, like I'm shooting a compound. Like when I get home, I'm gonna be setting up my hunting bow. Like it's already set up, but I'm gonna be re-shooting it, making sure my sight tape's good and all that stuff, and getting a bunch of arrows downrange out of that. It's really fun for me to shoot archery. Like that, like getting to shoot is the reward. It's not like, oh, if I don't win this thing, I'm gonna be upset and disappointed and hate myself, and then be unfulfilled in my archery career because I didn't win. So the more we put like those high valued things as like the big reward for why we do things, like if I needed to win world championships and then I came in like second or third place at every one I ever went to, like I would have a bunch of like unfulfilled years in my archery career that is like very sad and like somewhat depressing. I'm always chasing this thing that I'm like barely out of reach of, but I'm still like a very high level competitive shooter and I'm finding a lot of success. And so if I like just getting to shoot, I'm, you know, somewhat, you know, supported in my life to shoot archery. And that's like, my life could be a lot worse than that. And so like being able to travel the world, like that's super cool. Like, but like some of the most fun I have is like Tuesday nights, like at league night, just getting to hang out with my buddies and shoot archery. Like, so like just shooting's the reward. Like, and I keep like, if that's the reward, I want to do it more, like, because it's rewarding to do it and it's fun to do it. And I'm like, yeah, like when I'm all by myself, like shooting on the side of my house and I have that shot that just breaks perfect and like, you know, the bow just jumps straight at the target. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's like, that's what it's all about. Like, right. Like, you know, back when I, you know, in my able-bodied days when I was walking around on this earth and I played a lot of golf, you know, I would catch a back nine before I went into work. And, you know, I'd have a horrible round, but just that one shot that you hit and it's just so pure and you're like, oh yeah, that's it. It's the same for archery for me. It's like shooting that awesome crisp, you know, where the release just comes off and you're like, oh, that was like awesome. Like that's the reward for me. Like that feeling is the reward. So I don't know. I could go off and off about that too. So
no, I think that's really crucial because we can. I mean, Josh and I were talking yesterday about the importance of technique and how people look at it, the importance of different types of training, including mental training. But at the same time, there's a lot of like philosophy and psychology that go into like even allowing some of these things to work for people. And we tend to maybe put different things on the top of the pedestal at different times and think that this will help us get to our goals fastest or whatever. But the way we're looking at it, at the sport, or the way we set up our life around it, I think is really, really critical as a foundational aspect of all these other things that we try and build on top of it. And I agree with you, and when I hear you, it makes so much sense. And yet, in my own life, I know I screwed that up real bad at times. And I know that a lot of other people go through the same things where they're like, you know what? I got into this because I liked it. I got good at it. I loved doing it. And then somewhere, things started to turn sideways, and now I'm all turned around. I'm frustrated. I'm working harder and getting worse. And I'm losing a lot of the love I have for what is driving this in the first place. And I wonder, I mean, part of that could just be perspective, but I also feel like I've seen pretty overall healthy, happy people struggle down this path too. So I wonder, I mean, if you or Josh have any thoughts on how to like make sure that you don't, like, presumably there's been times even in your own life where you felt some of that start to creep in, and maybe you've been able to pull back and say, man, like the way I'm training, the way I'm thinking about this is not healthy right now. And I've been able to reframe this in the way you're talking about, where it's like, man, like this is the enjoyment, and the win is the gravy, is the icing on the cake. So yeah, what do you say to presumably archers you've seen and talked to face to face that have really struggled with this?
Yeah, it's difficult. I've seen people, like I've seen good friends of mine like struggle with this, and like, right, when I see somebody who just had a poor tournament performance, and you can just tell they're just like miserable, they hate their life, and I'm like, so why are you doing this? And a lot of people don't even like answer that question often in their own minds. And right, if you don't every once in a while sort of stop and go like, why am I doing this? Especially if you're on the struggle bus and it's not fun for you doing it. It's, you know, if you travel to, you know, enough USATs to earn a national ranking, you know, in the US, like that's a good amount of money. Like they're not cheap to get to, at least for me. And to spend that time, money, and effort to go be miserable, I'm like, what are you doing? You know? And so it's one is like evaluating that more regularly, I would say. Like oftentimes people come home from a tournament and it's just like, I don't know, back into the work week or whatever they have to do, and they don't really analyze like, okay, so how did that go? Like, was that fun? Was that worth my money? Was that worth the time involved, like taking days off work or whatever? Like, why am I doing this? And, you know, I think if you just start having that conversation with yourself on a more regular basis, right? Like I know people that are like, it's great for you guys, like just snapping stabilizers because they're so frustrated with archery. And I'm like, if I got to a level where I was breaking equipment because I was frustrated with my performance at archery, like I would find something else to do with my time. Because I don't need that level of frustration in my life. Like that's not I'll go find some arts and crafts things that's very like Zen-like, and that, you know, like I'll take up fly fishing and tie flies or something, you know, like, so have that conversation, like, why am I here? Does this bring fulfillment or enjoyment to my life? Or does it bring the opposite? Does it make me feel worse about myself because I'm doing this? And, you know, I love archery. I want people to find success in archery, and I want people to have fun in you know, find a sense of community within the sport. But if it's making your life worse, like you should at least reevaluate your quest within the archery world. It's like, man, maybe take a season off and just go, like, I don't know, go shoot flight archery. Like, go try to lob some arrows, like, out in the middle of the sky somewhere. Like, There's a bunch of different types of archery, and tournament target archery is probably one of the most stressful versions of archery. So, especially if you shot Buckeye Classic this weekend. So, really, really evaluate that if you don't, like, write it down if you need to. Like, dear journal, my archery is making me cry a lot. Like, I would evaluate how you're involved with archery, because you can just change the style of archery. You can change, there's so many different forms of archery. You can go shoot 3D, you can go shoot field, you can, and it doesn't have to be competitive. Like, you can just go help out at a club, if you still want to be involved in the community, like, you can just shoot in your backyard and have fun, and then go down becoming a judge, right? Like, we need judges to make tournaments work. And so it's like, okay, like, I don't know if people would see that as like a failure, and they're like, I want to be the best archer in the world. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, they're like, I'm not the best archer in the world. It's like, well, okay, you can still help out this community in big ways that really need help. I see young judges. I'm friends with a good amount of the judges that are on the national tournament scene, and I don't know why you would want to be a judge, but I'm really happy that you do, because without judges, we don't have tournaments, right? Without judges, again, the same thing. Are you happy being a judge? Are you does that provide a sense of fulfillment for you in a way that you're happy being there? Because that's enough, right? If you're a grumpy judge, that's not good for anybody. It's not good for you. It's not good for the athletes, and it's not good for the tournament. So, find your place, and whatever. This is a life lesson, not just archery, but it's like, find something you want to do, and then figure out how to become really good at it. I think is a good life goal.
Yeah, for sure. I think too, and maybe this is more common, maybe, speaking from for our own selves here and experience, a little more common with younger athletes, perhaps. I know that for myself, I got a lot of my identity started to be wrapped up in, I'm an archer and I'm a good archer. And if either of those things start to slip, I start to lose understanding of who I am, and feel like my life's work up until that point is becoming nullified or erased in some way. So even though I enjoyed this sport for a number of years before I maybe got to that point where I was either burnt out or maybe even overinvested, if that's a word, I think what I probably lost was not necessarily the setting up, or what I probably screwed up was not necessarily setting up the shooting in the wrong way, but just losing everything else. Like all the other stuff in life that added to archery and that archery added back to it is now underinvested in at the exclusion of archery. And then if you, again, attach your identity to this, the thing that you do for 8+ hours a day, and then you live and travel and say, this is who I am and what I do for a living, that can put you in a position where you're missing out on a lot of areas of life that you keep telling yourself you should or you need to, because you want to achieve these goals and you want to be working hard, and you're addicted to this idea of improvement and goal setting and moving forward and performance. But in reality, it's there are no rules about how you set this up. And if you need to rearrange your life to be healthier and happier and have archery be in a healthy symbiosis with the rest of your life, like maybe that's the issue too that an athlete might need to face, that's driving their frustration with archery itself. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Josh? Like how people need to kind of look at this to be healthy?
I think that the healthiness in shooting comes mainly from, can you put it in a good context where you can keep the enjoyment of the sport? Because if you're not enjoying it, there's really no purpose to doing archery, right? If you want to be rich, there's probably better ways to do that than archery, right? Like Evan said earlier. If you want to be famous, you can probably get famous a lot of other easier ways than doing archery. So at the end of the day, I don't think there's any reason to do this sport other than really, truly being passionate about it and loving what you do. The other thing I would say is, in order to help make it easier not to get so wrapped up in making this sport so serious and so intense and so tying so much of your identity into performance, I think it's important to remember that you literally can shoot and will shoot better when you're having fun and you're enjoying yourself, right? So if I'm going out there in every tournament, I'm stressing myself the hell out, and all of my happiness is kind of dictated on how that particular performance goes that day, I'm not going to have a good time, and I'm probably not going to shoot that well. I haven't seen a lot of people come away winning tournaments where they were stressed out and grumpy and just miserable the whole time. Most of the people winning are smiling and joking around, or at the very least, even if it's like a very high-level competition and you have to be more serious because no one's going to talk to you when you're in a gold medal match at a World Cup maybe, they're still like a little more on the loose side, right? They'll have a smile. They'll just kind of laugh off an 8 or a 7 they might shoot. They're not slamming they're not making it that serious and getting that frustrated. So I think if for no other reason, you should at least keep things fun and a little more on the chill side just to help your own performance, much less give yourself a justification for doing this sport so many hours a day. Because if you're not having fun, like what's the point of life if there's no enjoyment or fun or passion in what you're doing and it's all just grumpiness?
I would say some people maybe try and think that the after part is where they get to have fun, like after they win, after they win a gold medal, or after they achieve this huge goal that they get to live the rest of their life knowing that they're a great archer, that they're valuable, that they have what it takes, that they have something special, that people come up to them and recognize them and know them, that level of fame. Maybe that can be part of a driver, but I don't know, the likelihood of getting there, especially if the process itself of achieving that thing is so fraught with all these implications of the rest of your life, is like you want to give up all that, all the first part of your life to try to have a better after archery's done type of thing. Like that just doesn't seem like a great trade-off. Like I think if you want to get to the Olympics, if you want to get to World Cup, if you want to get in gold medal match and be the person everybody's looking at to compete and do well, try and focus on enjoying that part. Whether you win or not, I mean, you get to be there and you get to do something pretty cool that not a lot of other people get to do. And if you can be happy there, maybe you got what you need or what you really want out of this whole thing.
Absolutely.
To start, I know we've already done a lot of background kind of leading up to this, what you're focusing on with training and everything, but can you give us like a couple-minute rundown on the matches leading up to this? Like conditions, how challenging they were, what you were focusing on. Obviously, you're making it through these matches, but it's a big difference, right, if it's a 6-0 versus a tiebreaker 6-5 win. So I'm curious how you kind of got to this gold medal stage.
Yeah, so my first match was against a teammate, Michael Lukow. So that was a bummer, especially going for quota slots. Like, it would have been nicer to meet each other a match or two later, because then we would have, like, one of us would have been guaranteed a quota slot at that point, you know? So to be able to, like, taking each other out, somebody's going to go out that early is unfortunate. So, and it's rough. Like, I'm pretty good buddies with him. I was actually rooming with him on this trip, so it was like, you know, it's kind of like, oh,
awkward.
We get to go shoot against. So, but he's been on the team for a long time, and he's, you know, pretty good attitude. Like, that sort of stuff doesn't really ruffle his feathers, and it's just part of the situation. So we both handled it fairly well as far as, I was aware of. And I was able to, win that match against him. One thing was, so the conditions during matches were pretty howling windy. It was mostly left to right, but it was pumping. So you could have like a 5 mile an hour crosswind or a 25 mile an hour crosswind. And it was kind of just one of those days where you're looking at the sock and you're kind of like anticipating when to draw the bow. So like stuff like that does come down to tactics. And it was like the last end of my semifinal match, the last like scoring end, like normal end. Like I had gotten my last arrow off with about 30 seconds to go, and my opponent was like kind of waiting for like a bigger lull in the wind, and it just got bigger. And so I'm sitting there going like, oh, I got this set. Like this dude like picked the wrong time to shoot that last arrow. And right, it came down to like, I think he started drawing back with like 12 or 11 seconds, right? So now he's got a big wind and he's under some good pressure. He didn't shoot a horrible arrow, but it ended up, I forget if we tied that set or if I won that set, but that's what forced the 1 arrow shoot off. And then, right, I had a 1 arrow shoot off in the semifinal to go to the gold match. And I'm not somebody who uses the clock to trigger my shot. Like, it's weird. You'll see this in this match as well. Not me, but from my opponent. But I just shoot an arrow. Like, when I'm in practice, like, I don't, like, have to sit there and run the clock down to shoot an arrow. I just draw the thing back and shoot it. So I did that for the 1 arrow shoot off, right? I forget, you get 30 seconds or whatever you get for 1 arrow shoot off. And, like, the clock's going. Like, as soon as that, one buzzer goes, indicate shooting, like I'm drawing the bow back, like unless the wind's gnarly or something, and I think it could get better. But I shot a decent 9, and I think my opponent shot like a 7 or something like that. But yeah, it was a pretty spicy day wind wise. It was, any poor arrows I shot, I might have had a couple out the left where I was holding over like left 4 or 5. And then like the shot broke right as the wind died, and you're like, oh no, like, so sometimes stuff happens like that. But it was a fight to maintain left of the X ring. Like if I was shooting left 9s, I was stoked about it. Rough day, but I'm shooting like 48 pounds somewhere, 48, 49 pounds, with a pretty long draw length. So I think, my arrow speed's somewhere around 2.9 to 2.11, somewhere right in there. I think that helped me. More speed with a heavier arrow tends to be a bit better. Again, it was like 1 arrow at a time. Like, okay, look at the windsock, pick a spot and go. Because like if you just sit there and get analysis paralysis, you're not going to be able to make a shot anymore because you're just sitting there guessing, and being so apprehensive about the shot. But if you can just pick, like, okay, look at the windsock, I'm shooting now, like, left 6 and go, like put your pin, boom, left 6. Like, it's not like, oh, put it on the X and then left 6. Like, no. That's going to be bad because that's going to want to go right back to the gold. Like my X ring is now left 6. So I'm boom, left 6, right? And I'm driving through left 6, shot breaks. Yay. I see the arrow kick over. I'm like, yay, it worked. And, hits in the gold and life is good.
So yeah, rough conditions. I assume that could give some back and forth momentum pretty quickly, even among archers who maybe aren't even that close in ranking. It just kind of mixes up the whole field a little bit. But you persevered, you got through, you executed well in your strategy, and now we're at the gold medal match. Is this the same day, or do they have it like a couple days later?
This was a couple days later, so they had all the finals. So right, this is the finals venue, which was in this cool, town square down in Pilsen with this huge cathedral in the background. I was impressed with the finals venue. They did a really good job setting this up and made it really cool. So I shot through my matches, and then I think there was one more day of competition at the main competition field, and then there was on Saturday there was all the compound finals matches, and then Sunday was all the recurve finals matches. So it was like 2 or 3 days later that I was shooting for this final.
All right, should we get into it?
Sure.
Let's go.
All right, so I guess describe to us kind of either your feelings kind of starting off, things you had done as far as research on this field. I mean, anything that's kind of coming to mind as far as, I don't know, calming nerves, mental program, things you're thinking about as you get started here.
So, on the other side of that banner there, you can see the target in the background right there. That over there was the practice range. So that's where, I've been warming up, and there was big banners kind of blocking the wind. So, right, you could see that big banner behind the crowd right there, and that was blocking the winds because there was a big banner on the other side of the practice range. And so once I got on that stage, then you're elevated a bit, right? That stage was probably like 5 feet tall or something around there. So then you're exposed to that wind a bit more. So I was like, oh, it's a lot windier than I was thinking it is. And you could see the windsocks throughout the match. Like it was kind of gusty, we were getting, some full value winds, even higher, you see the banners blowing around. Like it was pretty gusty, windy.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff doesn't quite come across on video as much as, unless it's like a full on hurricane. But yeah, so like noticing that, I'm like, okay, I need to be more attentive to the wind. Like, I need to be more intentional with my spot, because in the practice range, I was just putting it on the gold and sending it. And they were hitting fairly well. So you could see me anytime I've got like this inquisitive look on my face, like that's me kind of like, where am I going to go with the wind here? Yeah, like I chose to shoot first. I was higher ranked going in. You could see me. So, like, right, when we shoot doubles or mixed teams for para athletes that don't get off the line, like you give a signal, like a go, or like, you're informing the judge, like your teammate can go. So I gave like a go. I'm like, oh, this is not teams. What are you doing, Kevin? Just something kicked in on being on that stage. I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
And, right, my first arrow was, decent. I'm like, okay, that's great. Second arrow, so I'm like, okay, both are kind of tall. I don't know if I grabbed some clicks here or not. I couldn't hear my coach, like with the announcer announcing while my coach was telling me. I'm like, you need to be louder, bud. Like, so I don't know. You only get like a brief second when they show your arrow on the big screen. So like, for me, if I'm executing a good shot, like with the follow through and intention, like I don't want to like break that focus and then look at the big screen and then, try to see where my arrow was. So I'm relying on my coach to spot for me. And we'll see how this shot, I'm trying to, like, if you saw my chair there, like it wiggled when I shot. And I was kind of like, what was that? And my right brake on my wheelchair I had not locked it all the way. So I must have had like kind of a reaction as I shot that one, instead of like maintaining straight driving towards the target. Like I must have like, had a little bobble, and it just turned into a big bobble because my chair moved when I did that. We'll see if it's on video, but I think when my coach comes up to me, I realize this is my first time watching the full match. I've seen the last end. But I wonder if it's on there. I might have locked it already. But yeah, that was just a little exciting for me. I'm like, oh, I just rolled a little bit, and that's normal. So,
yeah.
So yeah, that, yeah, you can see me saying, what a moron. But yeah, so first set, so I'm down now, 0.02, and I'm like, okay, like I'm still just focusing on what do I need to do to make a good shot here. Well, I need to run my process, like, right, in my mind I run, the words I say are nice and relaxed, slow and strong, like as I'm working through my shot. Nice and relaxed, slow, anchoring, and then strong break shot. That was a long one, so I probably wanted to let that one down. Yeah. But right, you're on a 1 arrow clock, so in para archery they do give us 30 seconds for people that might have an upper limb deficiency where it's harder for them to load an arrow. So I probably could have let that down and come through again, but you're always risking it on that final stage. So and now and there we go. We came back to
yeah, nice.
Strong comeback on that shot.
Right. Some of that's playing the wind. Like that long hold, I might have drifted back to gold, and the wind was kind of left and right throughout this match. So I don't know if we're going to be able to see the wind socks, a little better. And so moments like this where my competitor like drops a lot of points, like those are higher pressure situations for me than if he had shot 999, like I would, like, when there's less pressure on me, there's more pressure on me, because it's like, oh, you don't have to do too much and you're not going to screw up here. And that's where I really try to focus in on where my aim point is and what my job is, and I really try to not focus on what my competitor is doing, because it doesn't matter what they're doing at the end of the day. It matters me executing a decent shot. And and I think right here I'm telling my coach, he's like, can you hear me? And I'm like, no, you need to speak like you want to be heard. And, like I'm pals with the head coach, and he's a great coach, and I hope that didn't come across as me being a jerk, like it's me like joking around with him. So it's kind of funny. Some friends in the archery community have told me like, oh, we need to work on your form, and I was like, okay, I'll just keep winning stuff. Like, you can go work on form, and I'll just keep winning. Like, my release isn't like the most crisp, cleanest thing in the world, but there's been other athletes in the world that have found great success with it looking like that, but it's consistent. So that's
I'm sure. Yeah, if you can expand and get through the execution of the shot cleanly, then
yeah,
you're probably doing just fine.
World Archery has this great pic of like my bow is just about at brace height, and like I'm still right here, like, right. So I'm like, who cares if like after that my hand comes I agree, like a more crisp, clean release is more desirable, but I'm like, I don't know, like I don't know. Sure, do I want to clean it up? Absolutely. Is that preventing me from winning? Not at the moment. So
yeah,
it's working well enough.
Yeah.
So and just to double check here, are you guys getting a right to left wind? Because it seems like most of the arrows
right to left. Yes.
Okay.
There was kind of like, we're in this big square, and there was a street that was lined up more or less like just like maybe like 40 meters to 70 meters would be the width of that street, like that went across there. So there was like a tunnel of wind coming right there. And so sometimes it would, like, as it was swirling through the buildings and stuff, we would get a little right to left, and then it would push straight or left to right rather. And then, but it was majority right to left wind. Mostly when look at those nerves just shaking all over the place. And I find I'll often add pressure to my anchor, which prevents me from coming through the clickers clean. So that's something I've been working on, is to have kind of like really a purposeful light anchor. Like, most people struggle the other way, where they like anchor too light possibly. but I anchor so heavily that by the time I expand through the clicker, like you can see it causes like some head movement.
Yeah. Well, we've talked to people too recently about how they like the solid anchor and they don't have a lot of room to move, but then they use that bow arm to kind of drive towards the target, and that gets them that clearance or expansion that they need.
Yeah. The whole lip pursing thing, that's like something I'm totally unconscious about when I'm shooting. And I mean, you could see my look on my face, I'm not stoked with that arrow. But, it's like, you need to have short memory in that part of a match. Is like, okay, like, yeah, we're not in love with that. We still won this set. Like, let's build towards, the next arrow we got to shoot. What are we going to do? We're like, okay, I mean, you can see, so the windsock is like a little dead there, maybe like kind of a tailwind. It was kind of all over the place during the match, but primarily right to left.
Okay.
The last, so you can see me, I'm kind of in my zen, like I'm staring at my aim point in my mind right there. Like, right. Mm-hmm. Some of the biggest issues I have, is right. The announcers are calling arrow values. So if he's sitting there and I'm about to draw my bow back and he says 6 that my opponent just shot, like, well, that 6 is in your head. And like, it's going to have an effect unless you reload something on top of that. So that announcer 6, and I sit there and I chant like right 9, right 9, right 9, right 9, right 9. Like I put my image of what I want to shoot at in my head on top of that. Cause I'm like, if the last thing you hear is 6 and you start drawing your bow, some reason you're going to try to shoot a 6.
Yeah, or at least be questioning, like, is it the wind? Is something going on? Like, so trying to, reset to your game. Yeah,
and there's a big old bow quando right into the tent, so that was, and I think that shot, I'm aiming, like, right 8-9 line, so right 9 is kind of where my 10 ring was for me, and, that thing broke, and I had to bobble out to, right 7-6, and I'm like, ooh, like, I don't really think those are after reactions for most archers. Like if the bow's moving right to left when the shot breaks, when you let go of that string, it's going to move that way a lot faster when you go from 40 pounds to 0 pound, 40, 50 pounds to 0 pounds. So, and you could see like, my opponent, he just shot out the left and it's like, decent group out there. And I'm like, I was just.
It did seem like he got hit by the wind pretty bad on some of those shots. He had some go real far that direction.
But yeah, tricky because he wasn't throwing his bow arm like he was trying to react to it. It seemed like he was shooting kind of smoothish shots, but just not able to get the group back to the center. But obviously, you're probably trying to stay a couple arrows ahead of him in terms of where that group is going, and that's paying off.
Yeah, it's it's kind of funny, like when you're the higher ranked archer, you get to pick if you shoot first or second. And right, had I had known that the wind was a bit more spicy, like I probably would have shot second to be able to get a little more data going in. Like if that's not the case, I generally prefer to shoot first. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. You still got to shoot an arrow. But yeah, there are some little tactics there that you can, gain some information maybe. But it was, if you just watch the video, if you just had clips of my opponent shooting and myself shooting, like in the form and the whatever, you'd probably think he'd won the match. Like, his release pretty darn crisp and clean and right driving at the target, like, like nothing looks bad there to me, but like that was like a left, and like right there, I'm like smacking the crowd with my hands, but that was like a 9,
So coming off that win, what was your emotions and how'd you feel right afterwards?
I don't know. It was surprising. It was unexpected for sure. Like being world champion is like one of the goals on my list, right? And so like I don't know if this is going to cause commotion from people who have won world championships in off years, but the world championships before an Olympic year is always a bigger world championships because all these countries are vying for spots. So like some of the bigger names will not go to those off year world championships. Not always, like, but it happens. Like if you track that. So like for me, like winning the world champs right like in a quota spot year, I was like, I guess impressed with myself. Like, I don't know. I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. Like, I don't, I'm not trying to be like in a cocky way, but I'm like, yeah, that was, if you look at our world champs the year before in Dubai, like it was, just a little less attended and some of the bigger countries were not present. And where going into this, like everybody's vying for quota slots. I guess more of the emotion was when I won the semifinal with that 1 arrow shoot off, because that was a pretty tight match. And to be like, oh, I'm shooting like the worst I can do is silver now. Like it's kind of like that was more of when it hit me, and it's like, oh, that's really cool. And it was kind of funny when I was in the warm-up venue. I was like, I wonder if I'm going to get all nervous when I hit the stage. And obviously you can see some like shaking and things of that. Like some of the shots took a bit longer and like getting through that shot, like, right, I'm sure I was anchored, tighter than I wanted to be and getting that clicker to break was taking more effort than normal. But at the same time, it wasn't like when I hit that stage and they announced me and I'm getting ready, it's not like I felt like I was going to throw up or anything, it's not like I was like, oh geez, like what am I doing here? So, and it's kind of fun. In the warm-up venue, I was wondering that. I'm like, I wonder, like, thus far, like, it's never been a big thing where all of a sudden I, like, go white on the stage and I'm just like, oh, no. There's cameras in my face. This is scary. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm like, what's happening? I'm a pretty mellow personality, and so I think that's to my benefit in situations like that where I'm like, this is kind of cool. Like, look at all this stuff. Look at that drone.
Yeah, it sounds like just being present, number one, and being present in the situation, but also with yourself, of being able to kind of jokingly ask, like, oh, like, how am I going to feel in a few minutes when I get out there in a more lighthearted way than maybe some people who might be more stressed. But I wanted to ask too, did coming off of the, I guess, Paralympic gold medal in Tokyo, does that make you feel like a favorite, or like there's more pressure or expectation coming into a tournament like this, or is that too long ago and things are all changed and mixed up that it doesn't really play that much of a role?
Yeah, in my mind, I don't know from the outside perspective looking in, but in my mind, like I have a very short memory for both my successes and my failures. So, like winning gold in Tokyo, like that was an eternity ago in my mind. Shooting this event, and so yeah, it wasn't like I was sitting there going like, oh, I'm the best, whatever. Winning world championships is statistically everything. Like in real life, it's harder to win than to win in Tokyo. I don't know if the general archery population like realizes this, but because of the quota slots at the games, both the Olympics and Paralympics, there's a limited amount of competitors at the games. I think we start shooting the 16th at the games. And so, so there's a whole other round of competition at world champs, and there's more people present. And, and that really comes into play in the Paralympic Games this year. Like the maximum quota slots a country can earn is 2. And that was the same for Tokyo, except if you had a world championship on your team, like you could have had 3. So there's like a couple countries that had bonus slots there, but more or less there was 2 people from countries, and there's some countries like Italy that have 3 phenomenal shooters. So if you remove one of their shooters now, at the games, then it's like, okay, there's less like really high representation of the most elite archers. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I might have gone down a big loophole. Sorry.
No worries. Coming away from this last World Championships, where obviously things went really well, you had a plan and goal going into it, which awesome, you were able to accomplish that. Did you pick up anything new or learn anything new at this event that is making you better prepared for the next one?
Yeah, like I need to somehow simulate like those high pressure situations a bit more. That's something like I highly recommend to anybody. Again, make your training harder. So like, how am I going to make my training harder? Shooting matches against people that can often outshoot me, you know, like if I make the team for Paris, I'll make sure I spend a good amount of time out at the training center out in Chula Vista and shooting with the resident athletes out there and, you know, getting big volumes of arrows in because I love being home and training at home and everything. But when I'm at home, like I feel more trapped in adult world where it's like I've got these responsibilities I have are like ever present, like my irrigation system blowing up and having to call my landscaper and get that solved. And if I'm out at Chula Vista at the training center, it's like Never Neverland, and it's like none of that exists, and I can focus on archery, even though the beds are a lot less comfortable. But you know, and make the matches matter. Like I don't know how you can make matches matter. For me, it'd be like, you know, all right, we're gonna do, you know, best 3 out of 5 or 5 out of 7, and whoever loses buys lunch, or you know, something like low stakes like that, or like whoever loses has to fletch, you know, the next batch of arrows for the, you know, something where there's stakes. Like it doesn't have to be like, you know, insane, but like make it so that there's a reason to win and a reason to not lose. Another thing I recommend, it's not even the high stress, but it's to make shooting arrows when it doesn't feel good to shoot arrows is kind of what I'm trying to simulate. So if I were at the training center, right, I've got 70-meter indoor range that's all concrete, what I would do is I would set up like one of the bales that's on wheels, and they're the big old heavy Reinhardt targets, but they're on wheels. And so like I would put, you know, a bale at like say 30 meters or something like that, and then, you know, have my bow on the shooting line, and then like push, like my wheelchair, I can like push it against the bale to move the bale. So like I would push the bale 30 meters as hard as I could, right, to get my heart rate going up and all that stuff, and then cruise over, get on the line as fast as I could, and then shoot, you know, either 6 arrows or whatever, to where my heart rate's going crazy, and I'm like, this doesn't feel good, and I'm shaking, and you can see like my face is twitching, like I'm kind of shaking, but like the process is still happening. And for more or less, it happens in near the same time frame that it does for me when I'm execute a well-executed shot. Like my timing is normally like in that 7 to 8 second range, right? From drawing the bow back to click. And that's what matters most for me that I've become aware of, right? Is sure, if it starts hanging up and now I'm into 10 seconds, I'm like, yeah, it's probably my chances of success like are starting to go downhill at that point. But if you get back to anchor and all of a sudden your mind goes to like, oh, I'm shaking like crazy, like now you're not going to execute well at all. Like if your focus is on that, you're done. Like it's just going to implode. So being able to trust that, like, well, yeah, it's going to shake. Like it's not going to be the most steady hold I've ever seen. That's for sure. But to be able to trust to come through the clicker anyways, like, and focus on that instead of focusing on like, oh, geez, I can't hold still. Like, and then trigger all the bad thoughts that come along with that. It's the coolest thing in my mind I could have done this year. So I'm done. Like, it's fine now. And so I can, you know, get into my hunting setup a little soon, play around, be a little less serious, I still want to perform well at nationals, and like I'm going to shoot as best as I possibly can. But if I can be more relaxed and sort of rejuvenate myself and be less volume dependent now, well, then ramping into trials, you know, come next April, I'll be more likely to start that process sooner and be more prepared for trials going into that. So it's kind of like I look at blocks of time and like, where do I want to be most successful? So like, right, I want to be most successful during Paralympic trials. And so that window is going to be important to me. So I'm like, okay, when do I need to start the heavy volume to be prepared for that? And if I'm really hungry to start shooting volume, then it's going to be more likely to happen. And so yeah, I like, when COVID bumped everything back a year, like I just stopped shooting like recurve archery. I was like, there's no, like, I'm not going to keep this level of effort up for 2 years. So like I started shooting my compound. I shot nationals with compound that year. It was great. That's how I managed my sanity, how I managed like, getting stuff done around the house. I'm like, maybe I'll clean my archery shop. Like if I had a picture of that right now, it's like my workbench out in my archery shop's probably like 8 inches deep of just crap all over the place. It's like, maybe cleaning that up would probably be good for my soul.
So that seems really healthy. I think that a lot of people would, be very tempted to overtrain going into Olympics or Olympic trials because the desire is very high and they associate more hard work with better outcome and performance. But it sounds like you've got a pretty good understanding of yourself and rest and recognizing that it's not just total volume from now until the Olympic trials. It's a full rest period where I can really get back a lot of my life, kind of a emotional rest from all this stuff I've done, and also maybe a reward for having worked so hard going into the World Championships, and then saying, okay, well, I want to be able to ramp up and reach a higher level than I would have been able to if I had just tried to keep the volume as high as possible every week from now until April. I think that's pretty wise overall, and it takes maybe some maturity to be able to trust that process rather than say, I really want this goal. I might never, I only get so many chances at an Olympics, so I want to leave it all on the table, but in a way that's probably actually unhealthy and more likely to hurt my goals than getting the rest now and ramping up later.
Time is the most valuable thing we have, in our lives, as far as I'm concerned. And like, oftentimes people realize that a little later than they would have liked to. So yeah, like I'll be hanging out with friends, family, to where come, February, March, like I'm probably going to be more focused on shooting at that point because it's more than to be honed in. So, there's not a lot of competitive archery in the fall. Since I earned a quota slot and then my teammates did not earn a quota slot, so now I am no longer going to the Pan Am Games, like, because that's a quota slot event, and it's more useful for Team USA to send an athlete to earn a quota slot. Like, even though I like qualified first for trials for that event, like I'm not attending that event, so that really takes a big burden off of me because like that's at the end of November. So my next big serious event will be, trials, which start in April of next year. So, yeah, I really would have loved to go to the Pan Am Games, and my teammates are pretty gutted about not earning quota slots, and they're not happy about the situation. But I have faith that they're gonna put the effort in to earn, the quota slot down there. So, I'll be, super ready to cheer them on and support them and encourage them, and I'll, be a bouncing block for them, like bounce ideas off, what's your training like? How's your shooting going? I really like supporting people that are putting the effort in. Like there's nobody who could call me and I would ignore them. Like I really respect athletes who put the time in and are searching for ways to be better. And, a lot of athletes have done that to me. Like when I was very new in the sport, I reached out to the best athletes I could, and nobody turned me away or ignored me or said, like, go bother somebody else. You know, everybody was pretty open and honest with what led them to success. And I was extremely grateful for that. That's what allowed me to sort of ramp up so quickly in the sport and become successful, because, you know, people who were shooting with a high level of success were willing to share how they did it and what mattered most to them. So I love to be a part of that, and like being able to be a little more free to do that now will be kind of cool this fall.
Nice. Yeah. Well, any other thoughts, questions we got? I feel like we covered a lot of good stuff.
We kept him for over 2 hours already. So thanks for making so much time for us, Kevin.
Yeah.
Although maybe you're bored at the hotel anyway, so maybe we helped entertain you a little bit too.
Yeah. No. We've got a practice range open today that we can go shoot at, but again, I'm gonna go lob some arrows there this afternoon. But you know, sunset's like 8:30 or something ridiculous, so I got plenty of time.
Cool. Well, we're excited to see how I guess next year goes. There's not that much left for you this year since you're going to be kind of ramping down, like you said. But yeah, next year's going to be big stuff. We're excited to see you go compete again in the Olympics, and it'd be kind of crazy if you did a back-to-back.
It'd be a lot of fun. You know, we'll see. Maybe I'll get on that horse sometime again.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. My name's Joe Fanchin, and this is Josh Smith, and you're watching Follow Through. Today on Follow Through, we had a special guest, Kevin Mather, who just finished up at Pilsen with the World Championships and gave us a breakdown of his gold medal winning match. So thanks very much, and look forward to joining you guys again soon.